Okay, great. Thank you, Matteo. So, can you mute over there? It seems like I'm getting some echo. The agenda. There's um, a couple of things, voting items for the core TST. Um, one of them is on the certification brigades test plan, um, the link for which is over here. And there is also a collaboration proposal that comes from a company called CBTS. So hopefully CBTS folks are online. But let's start with the certification brigade. So I don't know if you have seen this link um, for the certification program. If Sriju is online, you can quickly tell us a little bit about the certification document.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Arnav. So the certification brigade has been working on the first certification program, which is the switch for the fabric switch, and we have come up with a test plan which takes the switch through various levels of testing, including the network OS loading, the required OFTP drivers loading, then goes through the basic open flow test cases, which is likely used in which is not likely, which will be used for a typical SEBA deployment. So this and then finally it also goes through a few of the operational test cases which the switch might face in the field. Then we have some the SDN integration test cases where we make sure the switch works well with ONOS, and we also have some. So, Saurabh, do you want me to go through the details or just a quick overview?
So we have been advertising this, so presumably the core TST is already aware of the switch certification. I really don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. So if you can just, take 5 minutes to talk about it, and then I think we can put it up for vote.
Sure. So in continuing with what I was telling, so it starts with the basic network operating system loading testing, the required drivers testing, and then it will test the open flows which will be programmed by SEBA. So that we'll be using the OF test framework for doing that, and then the test will proceed towards operational level test cases, which will include the test cases which the switch is subjected to in a field, like reboot or a port flap, or you change the OFTP drivers and stuff like that. And once those test cases are passed, we will take the switch through a controller integrate. Sorry, before that we will do the controller integration test, where we'll make sure the switch talks well with ONOS. We have the drivers specific to the switch successfully installed in ONOS. So, and the communication between the ONOS and the OFTP drivers is smooth, and the flows are getting installed properly. So actually, after this, we go through the operational test cases, which I mentioned before. And once the operational test cases are done, we take the switch through a scalability test cases, where we configure hundreds of fabric cross-connect interfaces between various ports, and make sure also for all the test cases we do traffic verification. So once the scalability test cases are done, we assume that switch is ready to be placed in the actual SEBA port. So then we will execute the SEBA port related test cases, where we do all the. Right now in SEBA 1.0, and there is only AT&T workflow. So we will be testing the whole AT&T workflow with the DUT, with the fabric switch as the DUT. And once all these test cases are successful, the test results and the logs needs to be submitted by the ACL and the vendor to the certification brigade, ONF certification brigade. And on successful verification, the switch it can be said to be certified to be working for SEBA 1.0. So just I missed to mention this. This particular test plan is for SEBA 1.0, and for every further releases which brings a change in the flows which is configured in the switch, or a new feature which is coming onto the switch, we will have a subsequent version number for that.
Okay.
So that's the summary of the program here.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sriju. I really appreciate the work the Certification Brigade has done. And I just wanted to let everyone know that, on our guide, where we have all the documentation for SEBA, you would typically find um, um, a BOM that talks about what you need, what is the bill of materials for SEBA, and then it also has some recommended hardware. Now, if you look at it so far, recommended hardware lists hardware that is either tested by us or verified by the company itself. In the future, what we will be doing is that only equipment that is actually certified according to the Certification Brigade documents are going to be listed here as certified by one of the ONF certification labs. And all other equipment that has not gone through the certification for a particular release this document will state that it has not been certified, and so will not be supported by the ONF. So the requirement will be not just for the aggregation switches that we use in SEBA right now, but eventually the Certification Brigade will also be working on OLTs and ONUs, and so they too will go through a proper certification process as outlined by the Certification Brigade's documents. Okay.
Are you going to make a distinction between certified, not certified, and in process of certification?
Yeah, we can certainly do that. That would be useful. It'll just, I think, encourage more and more vendors to go through certification. So I think that's a good comment, good advice. So,
Yes.
right, if there are any other questions, now is the time to ask the Certification Brigade before I put it up for TST vote. Any questions on the document? Okay, great. So I believe we have, let's see, I did not make a count of who's on the TST on the call right now, but I know Matteo is on the TST. I am on the TST. David?
I have no idea.
You know. Yeah, I know we do have a lot
There's
of.
a vote coming up, I think.
Yeah,
I think I'm on until that vote happens at least.
So if is Larry on the call?
David, you are still on the TST.
Yeah, so I'm just looking for the TST.
So it's Larry, Alfonso, David, Andy, Sorav, Matt Genere, Cedric Lam, me, and Oz.
So how many do we have?
So we have 9 people on the TST. So let's see, 3 of us are here in the room. Andy, are you on the call?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Larry, are you on the call?
I don't think so.
Okay. Is Matt or Cedric or Oz on the call?
No.
Okay. So what we can do is we can vote for the current members. We're 4 out of 9. So let's, the 4 of us, let's do a vote, and the rest I will try to ask on the court mailing list.
Right.
So, sorry, was there a comment?
No, I just.
Okay. I vote yes. And Matteo?
Yes.
Yes.
David? And Andy?
Yes, looks good.
Okay, great. So I shall poll the rest of the TST. We have 4 out of 9 yes votes right now. and I'll pull the rest of the TST and announce it on the mailing list. Thank you very much for your vote. The next item on
Excuse me, Saurav.
yes, Suchitra.
Yeah, Suchitra. Yeah. Just before going to the next item, I know that Tim is also on the call, Timothy Winters from UNH, who is actually leading the process for the certification. So just wanted to confirm if we are missing anything there.
Yeah, we have some. This is Tim. Just real quick, I'll send some policy documents out that also will need to be voted on, that are just generic how the test program runs. That I'll send to everybody. Is there a mailing list in particular I should send that to?
The CORD and SEBA mailing lists are probably the right ones.
Okay.
Are your policy documents also on the wiki?
There's a link to them, yes, but I will make sure that all the information is updated on the wiki. Yep.
Is it that one?
I will do that. That's a good point. I will make sure that the latest links are in there. I'm not sure the latest one's in there, so I will make sure that's all updated, and then I'll email the docs to those lists so that they can be voted on as well at the same time.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is collaboration proposal that we've received from CBTS, and bringing that up right now. Is anyone from CBTS on the call? I do believe the invite went out to CBTS, so okay. The idea was that they could come and talk about their proposal template, the proposal itself, and the TST could vote on it. The proposal is looking to bring an OLT device to support SEBA efforts and drive business and adoption of SEBA in Tier 1, 2, and 3 space. Documentation and review of the SEBA platform, coding assistance to our customers for SEBA and Volta implementations, and hardening the SEBA releases. I heard someone else joined. Is that someone from CBTS? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Is that true? I think the CBTS is bringing a different OLT device, right? I think I believe it's a FPGA based OLT.
Well, according to their proposal, it seems like we are working with an ODM today that's CIG.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
So it's their OLT, act as distributor and provider for their OLT and ONU products, along with the software stack developed to deploy a SEBA Volta solution.
Okay.
So it doesn't seem like they're developing their own.
That's correct. I think that's my understanding with them too. So, but unfortunately, they're not on the call.
Unfortunately, they're not on the call. So should we?
I'd wait for them, to be honest.
Sorry?
Wait for them to be here.
Yeah, wait for them, right? Yeah, that was my feeling too. Matteo, are you comfortable waiting?
Yeah.
Andy?
Yeah, I think that's the right thing to do.
One question. Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Andy, are you comfortable waiting till they are on the call and talk about their proposal before we vote?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, thank you very much. Sean, you had any questions, comments?
No.
Anybody else has any questions or comments? Okay, so we will table that discussion till the next call or a future call when CBTS is online. Okay, the final thing that we have on our agenda is a discussion between the SEBA Exemplar and RDT teams. So, as you may be aware, if you go to our website, there are reference designs and documents for the reference designs, at least a couple of them that are published right now. And what we usually typically discuss on this call are the exemplar implementations of those reference designs. And so for an upcoming ONF board meeting, the one of the topics was that the board would like to hear about how the reference design and the exemplar teams are working, and what is the correlation between, or how much is the exemplar following the reference design? Are there deviations, and so on and so forth? So the invitation was sent out to the reference design team to join the exemplar meeting and give them an update on where the exemplar is right now and how much it follows the SEBA art reference design. So you can download the reference design from this particular link. And if you haven't read it, there is a lot of information over here in terms of the scope of SEBA, what is the design target, and a lot of other information that we have reflected in the JIRAs as we go through developing the SEBA exemplar platform. The one thing to note over here in the reference design document is that the OLTs upstream connect to this fabric switch, but typically in the exemplar we refer to it as the AG switch or the aggregation switch, but in the reference design it is referred to as the ASG, is the aggregation and service gateway, because the reference design actually implements BNG functionality inside the pod, whereas the exemplar right now has the BNG functionality outside the pod. So this switch over here really just performs aggregation of on traffic and connects it to the BNG upstream, whereas the reference design has BNG capabilities inside the pod.
So the reference design supports both, so it's not exclusive one way or the other. So
right.
I wouldn't say that that's a deviation in the exemplar. The reference design talks to both options.
That's right. I was just trying to point out that the current status of the exemplar implementation is lags behind SEBA 1.0, the RD, in terms of the option where the BNG is embedded inside the hardware, inside the pod. That is actually a focus of the second half of the year. The current SEBA 1.0 and the upcoming SEBA 2.0 release will not have that functionality.
I would think that would actually be, in my opinion, I'll express my opinion. I would think that would in fact want to be a separate exemplar. I would think that having an exemplar with a BNG inside the box and having an exemplar with a BNG outside the box would be two very different use cases. I wouldn't think that you would want to necessarily try to make one exemplar do both, right?
That's a different workflow.
Would it count as a different workflow? It could. I think when we start implementing it, we can see just how much of a difference it is from what we have existing. My gut feel is that it would really be a different workflow. And so it becomes a different exemplar, so to speak, but it's still using the same components, just modifications of and extra features of these components. So
is a workflow
yeah, so I'm not sure that all of I'm sure that there is a large amount of commonality. I agree, but I'm not sure all of the components would be in both exemplars. I wouldn't want to bloat. I wouldn't want to bloat everything so that we have this big fat exemplar versus having each exemplar focus on what it focuses on more, and having them be skinnier. I don't know. I
don't know either. So actually, until we do the implementation, it's kind of hard for us to guess exactly what shape it'll take. But let's table that discussion until we have some initial exploration on that part. David, you had a question?
My question was, does each use case actually demand a different exemplar platform? Or is a platform really the set of components and it's just you're deploying it a little bit? Maybe I'm having trouble with English because platform to me seems,
So I typically don't like to say exemplar platform. I like to say exemplar implementation because the platform really is the same, whatever is the platform that we use right now. And so again, my gut feel says that it's going to be just a different collection of, mostly common components, but programmed differently or configured differently, with bringing out that said configuration, bringing out different functionality in those components. But I would say let's table that discussion until we have made some initial explorations on that part. So besides that, I did want to take a second to talk about the status of where we are right now. And for that, I should have been a little better prepared, forgive me, but this is the certification. But do you know where the Berlin documents? Let's see.
what do you mean better? Oh, you're looking for the link that Manuel sent or the shared site?
Yeah. Can you share that with me, because I think my presentation is in there.
Find it now.
I could find it in
I've
there.
got the link here.
Actually, I found it.
Oh, okay.
So I recently gave a talk in the Deutsche Telekom hosted Berlin SDN meetup, and in there I gave a community update. So this would be the same update that I'd like to present to the RDT team and to give you an idea about where we are in SEBA. So as you know, the SEBA and Volta community is centered around ONF and the operators that are interested in SEBA and Volta. But obviously, we really can't do this work without the collection of companies that form the SEBA and Volta community. So we organize this community in terms of brigades, as you've heard this talk many times before. So the technology profile, there's actually multiple brigades that made up the technology profile brigade. There was one that concentrated in Volta and ONOS functionality to bring out both the speed profiles and the technology profiles, one that goes into Volta and the other that goes into ONOS. And then there is another technology profile brigade that brings out these features on a NEM-wide level. So it's applicable to the SEBA pod. And we had a number of contributors from these companies working on these two brigades. We also have a BAL 3.0 brigade that is working on updating the BAL software that we use from Broadcom from its current version 2.6 to the new version 3.0. And we have contributors from these companies working towards the upgrade of the BAL software. Okay. We also have a SEBA pod management and Volta FCAPS brigade that works on multiple things. One of the main things that it's working on is that, yes, we have edge core equipment that we use today, but really Redfish is a standard, so that can be implemented by any OLT or switch vendor, and actually it came from the server world, so even the servers can support Redfish agents. And the whole point in this brigade is that how can we extract that information that tells you a lot of things about this hardware, like the CPU uses, the temperature, voltage of SF, bias currents of SFPs that are plugged in, and so on. how can we get that information out and into our monitoring software stack inside NEM? So this includes a lot of things that comes under, if you look at the FCAPS requirement that came from Mike Gasser for things that we need inside the SEBA pod and relate to the PON. There are some of that information also gets pulled out of the Redfish agent. So this again, we have contributors from EdgeCore and Sterlite working on this brigade together with a mentor from ONF. So each of these brigades have a mentor from ONF and then contributors from the wider community. Similarly, there is an ONOS FCAPS brigade where information from the various applications that are on top of ONOS that are used with Volta, information statistics for EA poll or radius or DHCP relay, and in the near future for IGMP. All those statistics are then published onto the Kafka bus via this Kafka integration application. And then that's how it enters, again, the NEMS monitoring infrastructure. So we do have a lot of contributors from Infosys, Northforge, Furukawa Electric, working on the ONOS FCAPS brigade. Similarly, we have a multicast brigade that has been started up that works on providing IPTV multicast applications where you have replication downstream in the aggregation switch as well as in the OLT across PON ports. And we have contributors from these companies working on the multicast brigade. What's interesting is that this brigade is also tackling issues with the Turk Telecom workflow, which is actually significantly different from the AT&T workflow in that it also uses multi-TCONT in the ONUs. So there's a TCONT per service in the ONU in the Turk Telecom workflow, as opposed to the AT&T workflow, which uses a single TCONT. So that work is also happening in the multicast brigade. And as you know, we have BBSIM, the software that we use to test the scalability of the control plane software that you see inside the SEBA pod. So you can have multiple BBSIMs activated to emulate to simulate the PON network, the control channel of the PON network, and have the rest of the software be tested at scale. And so we have a number of contributors in the BBSIM brigades as well. So essentially, the work of the community is split up over these brigades, and a lot of them are in progress right now. Their work can be tracked by attending the calls. So you can see that on the CORD calendar. For example, if you go to the SEBA project page, you will get a link to, pretty sure there was a link over here, yeah, of the CORD calendar. And then the CORD calendar will tell you about each of these brigades. So if you're curious, you can also join these brigades. The brigade calls, these are all open calls, and you can figure out the status of each of these brigades. So that's my very quick update to the members of the reference design team who are on the call about what is the current status of the SEBA Exemplar. One last thing I wanted to point out is that we are in the process of releasing SEBA 2.0. So if you look at all the issues that are currently being tackled by the community working on SEBA, you will find the SEBA 2.0, the target release date is the end of this month. And so these are the epics and the stories in each epic that are being tackled. We're making good progress. There were 156 issues in SEBA 2.0, 90 of which have been completed. and several are in progress right now. So 35 issues are in progress, and there are still 35 issues that may reflect the work of some of these brigades. So it's possible that the work that is happening in these brigades may continue, will not make it into the particular release, but then it'll make it into the next release. But so the one major work is the technology and speed profile work that will be the major feature that will be part of the SEBA 2.0 release. Okay, so now with that update, I wanted to give a chance for questions from the people on the call or the SEBA RDT members who would like to ask questions about the status of the Exemplar platform.
So the SEBA 2.0 release is based on Volta 1.7, right?
Yes, it's going to be based on Volta 1.7.
And then the ONOS 1.13.9.
1.13.9, yes.
And it will be, so is that June 30th?
Yeah, the end of this month. Well, basically, my target is basically before the 4th of July break.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm providing some update for the BBF. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so.
Yeah, in the presentation that I made, I had a potential sort of roadmap also. So we did the SEBA 1.0 release earlier this year, which was based on Volta 1.6 and the new CORD platform 6.1. It of course included the HSIS service with the AT&T workflow. We're still going to have the HSIS service and the AT&T workflow, but the big huge gap that we had in terms of being able to control QoS and being able to control the bandwidth per subscriber, that's the key feature that was brought in by the technology and speed profile work. So that's what's going to be released at the end of this month with Volta 1.7 and BAL version 2.6. This is kind of important because the BAL version 2.6 is not supported by Broadcom anymore. So there are some known issues, unfortunately, that will be part of this release. And we will make it clear in the release documentation that there are these known issues. Unfortunately, we can't do anything about it because the transition work to a newer version of BAL is still ongoing in the BAL 3.0 Brigade and will not be accomplished in time for this release. So this release will still very much have these known issues, which we will clearly identify. But the hope is that once the transition to BAL 3.0 is complete, we should be able to take and do a subsequent release with that, taking care of those known issues. And if it so happens that the multicast and Turk Telecom workflow are also ready in that time, it will make it into that release as well. Okay, and at the same time, the work for Volta 2.x is another big thing that we want SEBA to transition to Volta 2.x. And so if that also happens in the same time, don't go by the dates that I have put on the roadmap. Sometimes they are a little bit hard to predict depending on the status of various downstream projects. I mean, SEBA is a big integration project, and it is dependent on a number of upstream projects. So depending on the status of the upstream projects, they can come into SEBA at different times. So the idea is that in this roadmap, I wanted to show what is the next focus of the SEBA release in the second half of the year. So definitely a transition to Volta 2.x, having BNG functionality inside the SEBA port are big things that that will be the focus of the SEBA community in the second half of the year, together with the stuff that is already in progress in terms of BAL 3.0 and multicast.
So if Volta 2.1 will be ready, if Volta 2.1 can be ready before September,
Yeah.
Do you think there will be time for the 2.1 integration?
Yeah, I think so. I think definitely it should be something that we should look at.
I see an upcoming conflict.
How so? Okay.
Okay.
Speak louder too.
Sorry, I see an upcoming conflict. There are pressures within the community to say we need to slow down Volta new feature implementation and focus on Volta production quality.
Okay.
And in doing that, it is saying, hey, let's look at what we call a minimal viable product for Volta in terms of capability and maybe pull it back, which might pull things out like multicast support.
Okay.
And
yeah, that's actually...
Now the conflict here is then if other people in the community say, no, I have to move forward, like Turk Telecom, I know is multicast, I think very focused on that.
Right.
The conflict and danger here is a fork and a split within the community. And I think as a community that just needs to be addressed, I'll put it that way.
Yeah, it's a good point. To me, what we do in SEBA 2.0, okay, fills up a very big hole that we had in SEBA 1.0, right? With the technology and pre-profile work, I think it becomes very close to what you called a minimum viable product, right? You have one working workflow, one working service with QoS, with per subscriber bandwidth. And if Volta 2.0 or 2.x focuses just on this, what we release in SEBA 2.0, that is a huge step forward, I think, for Volta 2.x, right? And it doesn't have to worry about multi-T-count. It doesn't have to worry about, say, multicast, right? So if we can, yes, Turk Telecom, Netsia, they have that pressure, and they are working on it anyway right now. I believe in the 1.x branch, right? So if SEBA 2.x focuses on what was released, Volta 2.x focuses on what is getting released right now in SEBA 2.0, basically the equivalent of Volta 1.7 functionality, and really does that hardening, then I think it's a win-win to me, right?
Yeah,
because
I just don't know how the work Turk Telecom and Netsia are going forward with then reconciles through all that. And that's going to be the issue because they're going to spend some effort hardening essentially 1.7 or 1.8.
Well, I don't know if they're going to spend effort in hardening it. I think they're going to spend effort in demonstrating that capability is possible.
So their goal is just a demonstration, not a production rollout.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that is right. So even with us, right? I mean, with 1.7 and with BAL 2.6, we know there are many issues right now. So the focus is not so much on hardening because we need to move to that newer version of BAL anyway. So,
and I guess we have Mahil on the call if you want to make a statement here, right? So I think let's, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, in fact, we're trying to also hardening it, but as Saurav said, there are something to be done on both sides and also Volta side. So we also have a demonstration to Telecom. So we are trying to do this demo on Volta 1.7, trying to put the multicast and multi-T-count on it and do the presentation, then move them to Volta 2.0. And on the other hand, we're trying to harden the Volta 2.0 also. We're doing some tests, performance tests, etc. But this is it's going a bit slow as we expected because the things in BAL and Volta are still going on.
Yeah. I think we talked about that during the lockdown too. So I think, yeah. I think that's always an issue, right? Once the service provider started the implementation stream, taking pieces of the Exemplar, right? Then, how do you fork it? The fork will happen, but how do you contribute back? Do we want them to contribute back? I think the goal is yes. How do we contribute back to a correct version? That is that just the Volta SEBA issue? I think it's probably most of the open source community has the same question, right? So
there's a little bit difference here because again, we, for better or worse, we have this tendency to develop to the next demo of POC. And new features bring attention, which is great, but that causes tension with trying to get a production quality release out. And so the question is, if we pull back and say, hey, look, let's take all these very creative people and say, let's do some work that's not as creative, but get to a place where we can now deploy something, what does that do from a community perspective?
Well,
But as I said, right, the Volta 2.1, the position I think the community is taking is quality based than the demo or timeline based.
And I think there's also a difference between what different carriers see, or different people within different carriers see as a minimal viable product.
okay. So my gut feel is that if Volta, just focuses on these first two lines over here, Volta 2.x focuses on these first two lines here, I think that's a pretty good MVP to focus on hardening and quality.
When's BAL 3.0 supposed to be brought online? Is there a date for that, or is that this date, the September 30th one?
Well, that's my gut feel that it's going to take a month or two to do this upgrade in the BAL 3.0 Brigade. However, recently we had a conversation with Broadcom, and they are going to join the Brigade calls. And my hope is that their joining the Brigade calls will speed things up. So let's see. I mean, it's sometimes very hard to put sort of a deadline or an estimate of how quickly a brigade can progress on its task, simply because the brigade members and the community really are on a volunteer basis, right? So if they contribute, that's great. But if they get pulled into other things in their work, will delay things. So it's a little hard to predict exactly when a brigade can accomplish its tasks.
Sure. Okay.
Can we come back to the topic of which to do, features or hardening for just a second? Because I don't know. I think this is Bill Snow, by the way. So there's what will drive towards hardening is a group that wants it to be hardened, right, and drive it into production, and so right. They're the ones most interested in it being hardened, right? Or the people pulling something into production.
It's not the sole factor.
Just from experience, the people that want to pull something in production are the ones that care about it getting hardened, right? And so they're going to be driving activities around that, right? And requesting community support in doing that. They may or may not get that. Right? It may get to a point where the community is bifurcated on and can't find a way in the main line to do both, right?
Correct.
And then the TST is going to have to come up with a solution for that, right? Of some way to branch and come back, or right?
I agree, and I guess my argument is we're there at that point where the TST needs to make some decisions or come up with a plan.
Does the TST have a specific request from somebody trying to pull into production for how to make a change? Like, is there a production brigade that's driving something that's at odds with the other brigades? Like, or is it? Because to me, it's too. So far, the discussion is too kind of high level. Abstract. Yeah.
Okay, so at the community meeting, I don't know, Saurabh, did you hear me speak at the community meeting in Deutsch?
No, it was too early in the morning.
Fair enough. Was for me too. There was the problem with going to production or building or stabilizing Volta, and I think this goes beyond Volta as well, is the argument is it's hard to stabilize or get quality around a moving target, right? And right now, Volta in particular is a moving target on feature implementation. It has been for a while. And so unless we freeze feature implementation and shift some focus to building more stable testing and building more stable release, it's going to be very hard to get a stable release, because the minute you stabilize one thing, things have changed out from under you. And you're in a game of catch up.
Right. Okay. So if it were me trying to pull something into production, right, I would have a set of integration tests that, and some type of workflow pulling from these projects, right, into that, right, and that set of tests would, on any given day, right, and it would probably run daily. That tells you whether or not the base is still at the same level it was before, right? You have to drive it to the level you need it to be, right?
See, I would invert that. I would say you pull from a stable base into a canary branch where people are doing the edge, but
you could, but then you got to worry about integrating it back together, right?
But you can't have a stable release on something that's changing daily. You can't.
You can set a set of tests, and probably they all start, right? And you just drive until they all pass, right?
And the problem is, the minute they pass, someone's changed code, and there's another test case that hasn't been added.
No, because then your tests are incomplete.
Which they are today.
Well, sure. You're going to have to work on creating such tests to bring something into production. You have to anyways.
So when I have built production software in the past, there's a point you get features complete, call it, and then you really shift kind of a focus on your processes around taking the team and saying, okay, now we have to dig into this, find the edge cases, find those cases where we did positive code and not watching out for errors. And so there's focus shift. And I'm opinion is we need to do some of that focus shift if we're going to expect Volta to go or SEBA to go into a real production release. I think that's from my experience, and people have various different experiences. That's kind of what it's going to take. It's not going to just be one company or a couple group of people that say, "Hey, we're just going to go build out tests." It's going to take kind of a focus shift of the community.
Right. So there has to be some group of people in the community that care enough to start building that tests and driving that set of tests to.
I think it's more than just a set of tests.
Well, the alternative is you just let people go off on a different branch and do features, right? And then hope that you can integrate at some point in the future, right?
No, I think they're going to be, I would say.
You can't stop everybody in the community because not everybody has the same interest.
I'm not saying we're going to stop everybody in the community. I'm not. And again, what I proposed in the talk was sort of a long-term release, long-term support branch at a much slower cadence, and a canary branch that is doing some of the newer stuff, edge stuff. But that canary's branch responsibility to pull from the long-term support branch bug fixes, not the other way around. So I kind of inverted that problem.
Well, that might be possible with the SEBA release that comes at the end of June, right? Maybe the community could decide that release stays on a stability path, right? And then you got to worry about pulling back and forth, changes.
I mean, one problem we have today is we have two different cores essentially, which is a complication to all this.
Right.
Yeah. But I think from a TST perspective, some thought needs to be going into this. Because
whoever is pulling into production, are they going to pull the release that is coming at the end of June? If so, then that would be a candidate for long-term support. If not, then it's probably not, right? And there's going to be some other target.
Yeah, again, I think the TST needs to look at it.
Agreed.
Come up with a plan.
TST's the ones that should.
Okay, so we have
for the community, right? And I'm not on the TST, so my opinion doesn't count.
I am for a month or two.
So we have about 5 minutes before the top of the hour, and I wanted to give other RDT members an opportunity to ask more questions.
Hey, Saurav, there are also a few questions in the chat. Can you take a look?
Yeah, I have a question, because I think Camden from AT&T sent email to Larry and also Timon asking about the collaboration from Equinix SEBA with Core SEBA to support the multi-architecture. I know Timon and Larry are traveling, so I'm just wondering, how do we proceed?
So I think let's table that discussion till when they are when Larry is back and Timon is back and they join the call. I really wanted to give the SEBA RDT an opportunity to ask any other questions they may have about the exemplar.
Oh, sure. I misunderstood. Go ahead.
Any questions from the RDT?
So right now we're working on RD 2.0, right?
Okay.
So, and then I think they are topic, I think during the Deutsche Telekom event, we already heard some of those too also. So, for example, millimeter wave.
Millimeter wave, okay, yes.
So is that going to be, so how do we select whether your exemplar will introduce what knowledge version?
Sean?
Yes?
Sean, this is a scene. Let's talk about any new features being talked about in the RD in the next meeting on Monday.
Okay.
This is an open meeting for every member, so we should talk about anything which is released in the RD 1.0 and the exemplar today. Yeah.
Okay. Good point.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about just any alignment which is required between RD 1.0 and the exemplar work which is going on right now, or needs to be any deviations, any omissions, please bring that out. So I'm trying to figure out who is there from the RDT on the call. I see Sean. I obviously have Tom Moore here, and I see anyone else self-identify themselves, please, if you are on the RDT, actively working on the RD.
Mike Gesser.
Mike Gesser, thanks, Mike. And that's about it, right? We don't have anyone from ETRAN.
Sean missed that.
Sean is there. Yeah, Sean is there. I saw that. Thank you. Okay, so gentlemen, any questions from the RD side on 1.0? I think we had some discussions on the RD team meetings about potential maybe not fully aligned RD and EP. So this is the chance for you to ask those questions if there are any. Otherwise, we can table the other discussion for the next Monday morning meeting.
Well, so there was just a question around redfish, right? I mean, that's there's a brigade that's kind of ongoing with that, and we had some other discussions earlier around being able to communicate down to the adapters to initiate any tests, for instance. Like there was a test to go and retrieve the optical parameters from an ONU. And is it planned that the redfish implementation would reach down to the ONU also?
So I don't believe that is the case. I'll let Scott, who is leading the brigade, answer that.
Yeah, I think there's two different mechanisms at play. I think redfish is going to be reaching into the OLTs primarily, and the ONUs we're going to primarily be talking to over OMCI. What API we implement that allows you to operate on this OMCI interface over a high level, I think that's to be decided, and I think we're going to have some discussion on that on Monday. But definitely the OMCI stuff is separate from the redfish stuff at this point.
I think.
Yep, there were some emails about that going back a few weeks ago with Sterlite's involvement in their development, and so I agree with Scott on that. This is Tom Moore from AT&T. I just want to say, well, I know we've done a lot of time. I don't have a lot of questions with the alignment of what SEBA RD 1.0 to the exemplar. I think many of the things that are happening from the RD is more of a functional perspective. And there's a lot of work in that functional perspective being done. And as noted before, sort of you mentioned the B and G coming up in a future release. So we know that the functional parts of SEBA are still under development, and I think we can track it well and still have good tracking between the high level of the RD, what's going on in the JIRAs for SEBA, and if anything, I'm sure we're going to need some more questions refining the implementation, such as the question on the ONU testing. So we'll have more follow-up on that as we're involved in both from the RD team and into different implementations in the JIRA for SEBA.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Any last questions? We have a minute before we end the call.
Saru, there is a question on the chat from Pramshan asking about lag LSCP part.
Yeah, the lag LSCP work, we don't have a brigade right now, and the hope is that we can start a brigade. It won't be part of the SEBA 2.0 release clearly, but in the future release, if we can start a brigade around it and have contributions to completing the lag LACP work.
Hi, this is Joe Siaco from CBTS joining.
So the call was actually at 9 a.m. Pacific, and we are actually ending the call right now. So perhaps on a future call we can reschedule for CBTS to come on and talk about their collaboration proposal.
Okay. Michelle Roth gave us an invite that said 10 o'clock, and when I confirmed it, everybody kept saying 10 o'clock. So I apologize profusely for not being on, but everything we had said 10 o'clock Pacific, which is 1 Eastern.
Yeah,
so,
I think the call about a couple of months ago, I think the call used to be 10 a.m. Pacific. Then we rescheduled to 9 a.m. Just so more of our friends in Europe and India can join. I apologize actually if we gave you the wrong information, but let's reschedule for a future call.
Please, we're eager to participate, and I apologize for this is getting off on the wrong foot. It's not the way I wanted to do it, so I'm terribly sorry.
No worries. Yeah, it's probably the blame is also on our side. So thanks a lot, everyone, and let's talk again next week. Bye.
All right, very good. Bye. Thank you. Bye. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
That's unfortunate.